Continue on now to our literary corner, Korea Book Club, where we explore the world of Korean literature through works available in translation and beyond. And for that, we have joining us in the studio now our literary critic, Barry Welsh. Barry, hello. It's great to see you again.
Yes, good evening.
Okay, so what do you have in store for us today?
So tonight we're reviewing a short story called Sentinel. The Korean title is Pasu, and it's by Kim Chang, translated by Charles La Shure and published in the November 2019 issue of Clarkesworld Science Fiction and Fantasy Magazine. And so you can actually get this story for free online, and I'm sure we'll share the link. But Kim is a very highly regarded sci-fi writer here in South Korea, one of the most celebrated and high profile probably, but sadly doesn't actually have a huge amount of work translated into English yet. He has quite an interesting background. He studied electrical engineering at college and he was a programmer before he started his writing career. He debuted back in 2005 with an award-winning story called Byeolsang, which was about a virus spreading across the world. And then since then he's won several of the big South Korean sci-fi awards. He won the grand prize in 2014 at the South Korean SF Awards for a story called The Update, and then he won the same prize again in 2016 for a story called Our Banished World. And he's also active as a critic and a translator of science fiction, and he's translated classic science fiction books like William Gibson's Neuromancer and China Miéville's The City and the City. Today's story, The Sentinel, is set in the distant future after the collapse of civilization in a society where the survivors exist in a delicate balance with their environment and must follow very strict rules to survive. It's a bleak but soulful vision of humanity's future, and it touches on several challenging and complicated themes.
Right, just to give our listeners a bit more context as well, along with writers like Kim Bo-young and Juna, who we've talked about on this segment before. Kim Chang is one of the, icons of Korean science fiction, beloved by readers. Now, we've reviewed several novels and short stories in the past couple of years from trailblazing Korean sci-fi writers, and it's undeniable that the genre is exploding in all sorts of exciting directions at the moment. However, one theme that Korean and sci-fi writers in general return to again and again is that of life after civilization collapse, like we're talking about today. So then, Barry, how does Kim depict his version of a post-apocalyptic world?
Right, yeah, so this is a theme that sci-fi writers return to again and again, and it is interesting how Kim chooses to show it. So his story, Kim's version of a post-apocalyptic world, it's set in the distant future at some point, and like many of these sci-fi novels and stories, global civilization has collapsed due to environmental disasters. So we learn warming and climate anomalies, and we then learn that this disaster was our fault, and that attempts were made to prevent it, but despite the advanced technology that we possessed, the disaster or the disasters couldn't be averted. So some attempt was made to perhaps move to a different universe or a different galaxy even, but this simply wasn't possible to develop suitable technology in time. And as such, the humanity that does remain has been reduced to just 2,458 people, and the habitable area is just 187 kilometres in circumference. And outside this very small area is just desolation. And this circumference is ringed with advanced and sophisticated machines called Sentinels. So the sort of last example of the advanced technology that we'd created. And these Sentinels, they serve a couple of purposes. One, they protect the small space that's remaining to humanity in ways that aren't entirely clear at first. And then two, they draw energy from the fading stars in the sky, and they convert that energy so that the few remaining humans can use it to survive. And this idea about the use of energy is the crux of the story. So these survivors, they exist in this sort of fragile and delicate balance where they have to be conscious of every small amount of energy they use, sort of calculated to every joule or smallest measurable amount of energy. And it's so strict that the people who squander energy, they risk expulsion from society. And so Kim uses this situation to explore the role of energy in our lives.
Yes, it's quite hauntingly timely, really, especially when we're seeing surging gas bills here in Korea and the rest of the world in recent months. Households are closely keeping track of how much energy they are using this winter. And while it may be due to the crisis in Ukraine currently, in the long term, I guess it could become more of a longer-lasting issue. As we're all aware, there is a limit to fossil fuels, and the rise in renewables remains slow. This could just be the start of our struggle with the relationship with energy. In any case, where does Kim then take this idea? How does he depict our relationship with energy in the future?
Right, yeah, so it's a super interesting, concept. And we're introduced to the importance of energy in this future society through the main character, Chang Jae. And he's an engineer, and he's tasked with looking after and repairing the Sentinels. And the story begins with Chang Jae waking up, and immediately we notice his preoccupation with energy. How much energy is he using? How much energy is he expending on any little activity? He's very careful down to the smallest thing as he goes about his daily work of maintaining the Sentinels. He has to train a new recruit. He has to gather some wood, and as he performs these tasks, we learn that the remaining survivors calculate an annual energy budget of sorts, and to overspend is one of the worst things that you can do. And so in this first section of the story, we see this very precarious state of this fragile energy economy and how it affects people. We also learn that Chang Jae has suffered some kind of tragic event, some sort of heartbreak in his past that will be important later. And then in the story's second half, we learn that there is a vote that takes place every year. And to preserve energy and the society itself, each year the least useful person is expelled from society. And they say, we must eliminate the person whose ratio of productive activity to energy consumption was the lowest. So every year someone is cast out and essentially sentenced to death. And this year's decision is to cast out a politician who had previously been a representative of the people. And this leads to some difficult questions about the value of politicians and individuals in general.
Wow, so very macabre setting indeed. And it seems there's also a commentary on politics going on there as well. Another topic that will elicit quite a lot of emotions. I mean, who hasn't one time or another questioned the worth of our elected representatives? It's another interesting layer to this story then. So what is Kim trying to say about the value of politicians, and how successful is the story overall, Barry?
Right, yeah. So there's a lot of different things happening in this story, and it does present, in one view, a very negative perspective on politicians. We see the hubris and the arrogance of a man who thinks that he is more important than the average person. He believes his life is worth more because of the contribution he's made to society. He says, he believed that he was worth more than others, even though he didn't do any work at all, just because of his title as a representative. He said that it was that leaders are different from anyone else. They are by no means equal. So on the one hand, we can see how dysfunctional this view perhaps is, but it isn't quite that simple. This politician, he has shaped this society in a way that has enabled it to continue when perhaps it might not have. But then it's also further complicated by the idea that it's impossible to calculate the value of an individual to society by some kind of logic and the amount of energy that the person consumes, right? So it raises this issue of, what about love? What value is life if it's reduced to some kind of mere calculation? And this leads to all sorts of interesting complications in the second half of the story. And overall, it's a very soulful and haunting story that I think will give readers lots to think about. And I hope that we get more from Kim translated into English sometime soon.
Sure. Well, it sounds like a grim but remarkable, thought-provoking story, a sort of classic science fiction setup, perhaps in the mould of Soylent Green or something like that.
Right.
I think science fiction fans will particularly enjoy the ideas explored in this story. Once again, it's called Sentinel by Kim Chang. I believe it's available to read on the Clarkesworld website.
Yes, that's right.
So I think we'll put up a link on our social media accounts somewhere as well, so our listeners can check that out. Okay, we'll bring it to a close there. Barry, thank you for introducing us to that work. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, take care.